Good morning everybody, it's Alice from Whistlebare. I'm just out on my first morning rounds, checking the stock and walking the dogs who are over there. No doubt they'll appear in the video at some point. So I thought I would take this opportunity to tell you all about a very exciting new project here at Whistlebare. You may be able to see behind me lots of green tubes. In every one of those tubes there is a tree. Over the last few days we have planted well over 1,000 trees, and hopefully by the weekend we will have planted 2,000 trees. It's all part of a new era of agroforestry here at Whistlebare. We have been planning this for probably nearly 2 years now. We're very lucky that we have been working with the Woodland Trust and Accor Hotels, who have funded most of this project and are advising us. Why are we planting 2,000 trees? Well, 2,000 this year, another 1,500 next year. Actually, it's a 2-year project. There are actually so many reasons that we have been wanting to plant a lot of trees here at Whistlebare that I have written a list because my memory is terrible and I will forget to tell you about half of them. It may well be that half of them are not even on the list because I was writing this over my breakfast this morning, but still. First and foremost, we want trees for the goats. We have a relatively large herd of goats here, about 150, 180, something like that, and goats are browsers rather than grazers. That means that given a preference, they like to reach up for their food. They like to reach up to trees and shrubs, eat leaves, taller grasses, that sort of thing. They're not generally designed to nibble away at short grass. So we move our goats from pasture to pasture very regularly, so they are eating long grass. But if we could give them trees to eat, then that would be so much better. We have a certain amount of hedgerows, but really not enough. Trees are great for so many reasons. So the goats will enjoy eating them. And some of the reasons they'll enjoy eating them is that some species have natural medicinal value to the goats. Willow in particular, that's a really good one. Willow has 2 functions. It is a natural helmithic, anti-helmithic that is. That is, it helps goats control their own worm burden. If they eat willow, it reduces the number of worms, intestinal worms that they have. And that's a constant battle, so that's good. Also, it has natural pain-killing properties. It's almost like nature's own paracetamol. So if a goat's not feeling terribly well or has got a bit of a headache or something, who knows, you will often see them tucking into some willow. They're very clever. They seem to know what they need and what they want. So we've planted a lot of willow. Willow has the added advantage that it grows terribly quickly. So we can coppice it, and along with a lot of the other trees we're putting in. They're all suitable for coppicing, which means we can harvest them quite often. And so as well as the goats being able to eat them in the fields, we can hang branches to dry in the barns, and then in the winter when the goats are inside, we can give them leaf hay to eat, and they just think that's wonderful. If you put a big bunch of leaf hay into the goats, they're all over it. They just love it. So that's really pleasing, and another crop for us. What else? Now, one of the great things about planting trees is, of course, they root very deeply. So they are using a whole part of the soil that the rest of our grass and crops don't ever reach. So they bring all sorts of minerals up from deep in the earth into their tree structure. Those minerals become available to the livestock through eating their leaves, and also when the leaves fall, they are reintroduced to the topsoil through the natural regenerative process. So planting trees is giving our animals access to all sorts of goodies that are deep down under our feet, and actually indeed giving the soil access to those minerals, because the trees will bring them up and reintroduce them to the surface, and hence they can become available to the shallow rooting crops as well. There are all sorts of physical reasons that the trees are good for our farm. I don't know how easy this is going to be to see. Not terribly. number 2 goat slave actually has a drone, and I'm hoping that he might come out and film a bit from overhead, because this would probably be easier to see that way. You can see that we have planted the trees in lines, either 2 or 3 rows of trees deep, and they are running up and down the hill, but they are running perpendicular to all sorts of ridge and furrow that's going on in the field. And that means that when the rainfall is very heavy, as it has been the last few days, and the water runs down the ridges and furrows, the trees will be there forming natural barriers, and so will slow the travel of the water and mean that much more of it is absorbed by the soil, much less soil is swept away by the water, which is of great benefit. Other physical benefits: the trees will just create shelter. The goats are very delicate little ladies. They don't like to be out in the wet and the rain and things, but if they've got plenty of shelter, it's amazing to see how often actually they do stay outside. When they're in the fields with the thick hedges and it starts to rain, they tend to all go and settle under the hedge rather than running back into their house. So if we can have a lot more trees, then that's a lot more shelter and happier goats. What else have I got on my list? Yes. We're planting the trees in rows, and we're actually doing it over the next 2 years across the whole of the farm. And in doing so, we are dividing our bigger fields into lots of small ones. And that's going to allow us to start practicing what's called mob grazing. So what we'll do is we will introduce the goats to one strip, so one small paddock at a time. And the trees themselves, actually the lower parts of the trees, will be blocked off with electric fencing. So the goats will be able to reach the higher branches that reach over, but they won't be able to get at the trunks, because goats are a bit naughty. They do like a bit of bark, and if you're not careful, they will have barked young trees very quickly. Hence killing the trees, which is really not the point. Anyway, so you have a relatively large group of animals in a relatively small paddock. So then they will graze that down quite hard over a few day period, and we move them to the next paddock. We always follow the goats with the sheep, because the sheep do like to nibble quite short grass. So each paddock is grazed, ooh, there go the dogs. Each paddock will be grazed by the goats and then by the sheep, and then they are moved straight on to the next paddock. So every paddock will only be grazed for 1 or 2 weeks in 8 or 10 weeks. And that way, there's lots of research been done. It shows it makes the ground very productive indeed, because the muck from the animals is relatively evenly spread across the field, so that's nature's own fertilizer going on there. And because the field has been grazed down quite evenly, it grows very quickly. So by mob grazing, hopefully we can increase the productivity of the farm, and we can improve the quality of the soil just by having a big turnover of vegetation and muck on the surface. So all in all, I'm sure you understand, it's a very exciting project. It's a huge change. We've got all the planting to do, we've got lots of fencing to do, we'll have a huge amount of harvesting of trees to do, moving of animals around, but all in all, it should really improve the structure of the soil on the farm, should really improve the animals' diet in terms of the vitamins and minerals and things that they receive. It will be more financially productive for us because of all of those reasons. Makes the ground more productive and the animals healthier. It means that we can reduce the additives that we give in terms of mineral blocks, and hopefully reduce our use of wormers. Oh, it just goes on and on. It just goes on and on. It really is, I can't begin to tell you what an exciting project this is, and it's long term, but it's going to be great. Oh, and wood, of course, firewood. Our house up there on the hill, can you see our house? there it is. It looks very small from this perspective. It's actually not very far away at all. It's only at the top of this field. But we have wood burning stoves in the house. A lot of our heating comes from the stoves, and it will be great to have our own wood to put in them. And I haven't told you what trees we're planting. Goodness, we are planting lots and lots of different trees because they all offer different things. In these rows, there we go, these rows, you can see the tall tubes have big trees in, the species that are going to be longer and slower growing and give a very big tree, and the small tubes have got species in that we can coppice. They can be shrub-like in their growth, very, very quick in their growth, and we will be coppicing those, using them for leaf hay, feeding them to the animals. I have got a list here in my pocket of all the different trees we're growing. Hang on. Okay, so of the large trees, there is oak, sycamore, small-leaved lime, hornbeam, Scots pine, mulberry, wild cherry, aspen, silver birch, crabapple, rowan, field maple, wild cherry. Did I already say that? Yes, I did. Scots pine, I already said that too. Okay, moving on to the small trees and shrubs. Wych elm, goat willow, hazel, alder, aspen, hawthorn, sea buckthorn. Any others? No, I think that's about it. I will, over the next few weeks, go through those trees much more individually and tell you why we are planting them specifically. Anyway, I feel like I've talked for Britain here. I hope it's exciting for you, because it really, really is exciting for us. I will be drivelling on about trees a lot over the next few weeks. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.